The 5-0 Vikings host the 4-1 Detroit Lions. This is probably the game of the week. It is going to be an extremely fun NFC North matchup. Extremely fun. You've got the high-powered offense, the Detroit Lions, against Flores and his box of nightmares that he provides with all the pressures known to man.
All the pressures. He never stops. It's the whole game.
So, keys to this game. Will, your first thought on this, and then we'll head into no.
Yeah, no, I think people are kind of waiting around to see Sam Darnold turn into like a pumpkin at some point in this season, but I don't think it's going to happen. You know, I think he's prepared for what's going to come ahead. What will be really interesting is, can Detroit attack constantly throughout the whole game? You know, I find that, you know, their receiving core is really good. We're going to see who's the Vikings starting corner.
Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah, Gilmore. So that's going to be like a really good matchup
against Amon-Ra.
Against Amon-Ra, because Stephon Gilmore, like, he's really good at preparing for games. And he, even as he gets older, he's still just as good because he's always in the film. You know what I mean? So it's going to be really interesting. That matchup there early, you know, if Stephon can kind of contain Ra early, and I think he can, you know, it's going to be tough sledding, you know, but in a good way, in an entertaining way. It's rare you get to see players of that caliber sort of match up. But, I mean, this game could kind of go either way. Yeah, no, it could really go either way. I guess coaching-wise, they're on point. You've got the Lions have a future head coach as an OC right now, so he's going to be really deep in his bag. So it's hard. In fact, I'd probably say that's the more interesting matchup right there. You know, because Brian Flores right now, like, he's cooking. You know, both sides, both OC for Detroit and the DC for the Vikings. So
you saw the bag of tricks that they tried to lay on the Cowboys, even though the Cowboys aren't a good team, right? We know this.
Yeah, I mean, they basically toyed with the Cowboys, so it's almost.
I really wish Penei Sewell wasn't. That play last week. I really wish that Penei Sewell wasn't illegally downfield, because no, I can see the smile on your face then, because that was one of the most beautiful plays that they could have drawn up. Because we've all been saying, what if they get Penei Sewell in space and just give him the ball because he's an absolute unit. So no. What do you think is the key to this game? Because the way I see it is both teams have a very good run defense, right? And Detroit love to run the ball. They love to smash mouth.
Defensively, I think both people look at these teams and see their offensive numbers. These teams are both capable of putting up great numbers. They have great offensive weapons, great skill position players, both at wide receiver and even in the running back game. But this game is going to come down to how these defenses respond to those offenses, and the Vikings have been playing out of their mind. Brian Flores, who has the highest blitz percentage in the NFL, has been putting quarterbacks that we've seen cook in the past under immense pressure. I mean, we all saw what Rodgers looked like. I mean, we know Rodgers hasn't been
I saw what Rodgers looked like in person. But
part of that, I think, is the Vikings, and it's not just their corners like Stephon Gilmore, and their safeties are all very, very capable, but they've been getting incredible play out of their linebacker position. Obviously, we know what Van Ginkel's on about right now. Man is a pick-six machine. But again, teams have been really struggling to figure out how to read these Brian Flores disguises when they're on offense, especially when they're trying to move the ball downfield. And I think there's a massive blow that we haven't really touched upon yet, but losing Aiden Hutchinson is huge for the Detroit defense. That guy is I put him right up there with TJ Watt in terms of how disruptive he can be for the quarterback. And if you're going to give Sam Darnold, who has weapons, He's a capable quarterback. He's no amazing quarterback. He's not going to necessarily win you games,
But
but
he's
when he
like
has the
Purdy
weapons he
is,
has
right?
around
In
you,
terms
he's going
of
to be able to get you stuff.
like steadiness.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting matchup. You got two quarterbacks here that both have had their struggles in the past, and people said are not NFL capable quarterbacks, and are both leading teams to a very impressive record. But yeah, this is probably a battle right now for the AFC or the NFC North. I think these are probably easily your two teams that are at the top. I mean, I'm not saying the Packers are too far behind, but it's between the Vikings and the Lions right now. The Vikings are coming off a bye, which is important to note. The Lions are kind of coming off a bye. They just had a little scrimmage against some team down in Dallas. Didn't really have to do a ton of things, but they did lose a player in that practice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the Lions are going to come in this game with a lot of confidence offensively, and if Minnesota can keep them quiet in that first quarter with all that juice that they have coming in from that Dallas game, I think it's going to settle into a pretty tight matchup. So the Lions are going to have to figure out something defensively, but I think this comes down to the defenses, not the offenses.
So if you look at it in terms of points scored per game, points allowed per game, Detroit are number 1 in the league, Minnesota are 6th, right, in terms of points scored. Points allowed per game, Detroit are 8th at 18, Minnesota are 3rd at 15 points per game, right? So they're both very good on offense and they're both very good on defense. Obviously, with Hutch being gone, we'll see how that affects. Now, if you look at, they're both pretty poor defensively in terms of yardage against the pass. And they're both very stout against the run. One team likes to run the ball a lot because obviously Detroit is the 4th in the league. Minnesota haven't been as brilliant with the running game, and especially with Aaron Jones kind of having this hamstring problems. And what I saw when I saw the Vikings in person was once Aaron Jones left the game, the run offense wasn't there. And that allowed the defense to pin their ears back and go after Sam Darnold. Because they know that the guys behind them weren't able to get the same level of... They weren't able to hit the gaps as well. Now, recording this on a Thursday night, we don't know how Aaron Jones is going to be as come to the weekend. If he's going to be A-OK to go. If he's out, then that will have an impact because then it's pin your ears back in terms of defensive position players for the Lions and go after the quarterback because
who's there
behind
next?
I mean, just to note, they did acquire Cam Akers in a trade earlier this week.
Yeah, they did Cam Akers, but
I think that's going to give them a little bit of a security blanket if Aaron Jones is out. I mean, I know they're very high on Ty Chandler. However, I think having Cam Akers gives you a little more flexibility. Kind of just having two backs that you can trust out there. Yeah, it's going to be important. But yeah, I mean, I think their wide receivers are capable even if they're under a lot of pressure. And again, I don't know how much pressure the Lions are going to be able to put on the Vikings without Hutchinson. So,
one thing I do want to see, so if we look at who the Vikings have played so far, right? They've played the 49ers who love to run the ball. And they only gave up 102 yards on the ground to them, right? Texans, not only did they cause the quarterback nightmares, but they were off the back of running the ball quite well. But I think Mixon, was he in those games?
Joe Mixon was out. That was the Cam Akers game.
So that was the Cam Akers game, and Cam Akers was held, well, the whole team was held to 38 rushing yards.
They were also down by a lot of points very quickly.
Yes. And then the Packers, the game in London. Not the game in London. The Packers, the game before the game in London. And they held them to 86 yards, and then the Jets, they held that Jets offense to 36 yards. So Cam Akers now being on their team, it's going to be fun to see how he does against that Detroit defense. But
yeah, I mean, was Cam Akers in street clothes before this, or was he?
No, he was at the Texans, so he's already. So okay, predictions. This is a very, very close game to predict. I want one of you boys to go first.
I'm gonna go with the Vikings on this, only because I do feel Hutchinson's the loss of Hutchinson's is like a big dynamic in terms of what they do on defense. When you can have that guy that can win one-on-one pretty much every snap, you know there's going to be pressure every snap or at least a sack, right? So when you remove that element, like defensive coordinators love having a guy that can just win his matchup, because it means you can just rush base and then you can just have everyone drop back. It just makes life easier. You don't have to commit linebackers to blitzes when you know you've got that one guy that can win it. So that kind of changes what you can do defensively. It's going to be a close game, and I think because both teams are so talented across the board and are playing really well, I'm going to actually give it to the Vikings to sort of take this one, not by much, and it is because Detroit's sort of losing their star edge rusher. So I'm gonna go with the Vikings to take this one, but it's gonna be close and it's gonna be entertaining, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go with the Vikings as well. The loss of Aiden Hutchinson is a pretty significant one, and in a matchup like this, where you definitely need to disrupt the quarterback, not allow the routes to get set up, I think that's going to give the Lions a bit of trouble in terms of defending when the Vikings are on offense. I just also really like this Vikings defense. I think they're one of the best in the league. I think they're going to be one of the best in the league at the end of the year. I mean, I'll be fully honest. I picked the Vikings to come in last place in the NFC North. I was incorrect on this prediction. But I do think the way the Vikings are playing, the way Brian Flores is leading that defense is going to get him some job offers at the end of this year. Hopefully back in the head coach position. But yeah, I have the Vikings winning. I think they win by a touchdown in this game. I think they take a lead, and it ends up being not as close as people might think.
The one thing that the Vikings did do, though, when they played in London, was they had a lead, and then they let the Jets come back into the game.
That they did.
They did let the Jets come back into the game, and they cannot afford to let a team like the Lions to come back into the game, because what the Lions can do is they can hit you quickly. Jameson Williams, they can hit you ultra fast. Key, as we said, the key to this game for me is David Montgomery versus this Vikings defense. It's not Jahmyr Gibbs, it's how the thumper does. And despite it, I still think the Vikings win. So that's my prediction. It's a full house from us. It's going to be an absolutely brilliant game. Why on earth is it a 1 Eastern game? I know before the season starts, we don't know whether these teams are going to be good or not. The game of the week is in the first window. Well, not the first window. First window is the terrible London game. The game
this is primetime game for the Brits. 1 o'clock
PM,
Eastern is prime time for y'all.
6 p.m. for us, so it's perfect for us.
You'll be cooking.
But yes,
like midnight.
We don't have to wait to midnight for the best game of the day.
Yeah,
but yeah, Vikings to continue their unbeaten run for me, and let's see how this game goes on Sunday.